Did you ask the Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden?
No, actually, I didn't. I asked the Ukraine to investigate the allegations that there was interference in the election of 2016 by the Ukrainians for the benefit of Hillary Clinton, for which there already is a court finding.
You never asked anything about Hunter Biden. You never asked anything about Joe Biden.
The only thing I asked
about
Joe Biden is to get to the bottom of how it was that Lutsenko, who was appointed, dismissed the case against Antak.
So you did ask Ukraine to look into Joe Biden?
Of course I did.
You just said you didn't.
No, I didn't ask him to look into Joe Biden. I asked him to look into the allegations that related to my client, which tangentially involved Joe Biden in a massive bribery scheme,
Rudy,
not unlike what he did in China.
Rudy,
you explain to me how the kid got $1.5 billion from China.
I have no problem with you launching allegations, but just be careful about what you say. I asked you, did you ask Ukraine to look at Joe Biden? You said no. Then you went on to say that you did.
I didn't say
recorded.
That. And
I don't like
evasiveness. You want to distort what I'm saying.
I don't want to distort.
You're totally biased.
I'm not biased.
You are,
Why
Chris.
would I have you on if I were biased, knowing that we're going to have this kind of conversation?
Because it is sad to watch what happened to you. It's sad.
Sad to watch what happened to me. I'm a sellout.
You are a sellout.
You are telling me that I'm a sellout.
These are crimes of major proportions. And because they're Democrats, you won't cover it. A $1.5 million investment by China in Biden's private equity fund, and the partners
I'm not saying that these types of things shouldn't be looked at.
Whitey Bulger's nephew. Do you know that they were partners with Whitey Bulger's nephew?
I'm not saying that anything that you're saying shouldn't be looked at.
And your corrupt media won't cover it because he's a Democrat.
Rudy, I can't just cover something because you say I should. All right? That's not the way it works.
You don't have to say I should.
But I got to tell you,
read the book.
You who my whole lifetime stood up for one simple ideal when you were at your best, which was character counts in leadership.
And you are standing up for two systems of justice.
Oh, I'm standing up for two systems of justice.
Joe Biden can be involved in bribery. Joe Biden's son can get $1.5 billion from China, and you won't cover it. And you want to cover some ridiculous charge that I urged the Ukrainian government to investigate corruption. Well, I did, and I'm proud of it.
There are bad days on TV, and then there are meltdowns, and then there's whatever just happened to Rudy Giuliani. Because whatever it was, it absolutely wasn't good news for the White House. Now, aside from the fact that Giuliani can't help but lie so effortlessly that he contradicts himself multiple times within the same sentence, there seems to be a pretty massive scandal here that the former mayor of New York just landed himself right in the middle of. Now, there are a few moving parts here. They all seem to be interconnected, and they bode really poorly for Trump. First, we know that there exists a whistleblower complaint made by an intelligence official that involves communications with a foreign leader and a promise that Trump made. And this complaint was allegedly so alarming that the whistleblower brought it to the Inspector General of the intelligence community. And the Inspector General himself, Michael Atkinson, a Trump appointee, agreed that it did in fact meet the statutory definition of an urgent concern. But whereas a complaint of that nature would normally fall under the Director of National Intelligence's purview and would therefore be shared with Congress, Trump's acting Director of National Intelligence, Joseph Maguire, and Trump's Department of Justice decided that it didn't meet the criteria, meaning that it wouldn't be shared with Congress. How convenient. Now, I should mention too that just 2.5 weeks before the complaint was filed, Trump had a phone call with Ukraine's new president, which brings us to Ukraine, where just last month, the Trump administration has suddenly decided to withhold $250 million in military assistance, which was necessary in the midst of Russian aggression in the region. Now, the White House gave no legitimate justification for withholding the funds, saying only that they were reviewing the expenditure to make sure the money was being used in the best interest of the United States. But you might remember that Russia invaded Ukraine and annexed part of its sovereign territory, so that seems like a pretty adequate justification to continue giving them military assistance. And it was only when the decision to withhold aid started garnering media attention that on September 12th, the Trump administration suddenly reversed course and reinstated Ukraine's military assistance. And finally, the last step, which is, as Giuliani admitted on national television, that he went to Ukraine to urge the country to investigate Joe Biden. He claims that Biden played a role in the government's dismissal of a prosecutor who had investigated a natural gas company connected to his son, Hunter Biden. Only There were a spate of other Western nations that also called for the prosecutor's dismissal, and there's no evidence of any wrongdoing by Biden. But it just so happens that Joe Biden, as the current frontrunner for the Democratic nomination, is Trump's biggest threat to re-election in 2020. So it would certainly benefit this administration if, all of a sudden, the person who, at least at this point in time, seems most likely to face off against Trump in 2020 was mired in an international corruption scandal. Now look, I'm not saying that the whistleblower complaint is about Trump withholding aid to Ukraine in exchange for the prosecution of a political opponent, because we don't know that. But if it is, then this would likely be the biggest scandal of a presidency that is predicated on scandals. It would be an abuse of power so egregious, followed by a cover-up so egregious, that Trump shouldn't even make it to the next election to see all of his sleuthing pay off. So time will tell if these things are all connected, but judging by the impeccable timing, the characteristic sloppiness, the deliberate corruption, and the glaring obviousness of it all, I'd be stunned if it wasn't. And so in their desperation to screw over Joe Biden, Trump and Giuliani likely just landed themselves in a massive hole that there is little chance of escaping.